There's nothing better than talking about cricket, football, hockey, and other sporting activities that Pakistan is part of.
They did become number one in the ODI rankings this year, but then again, you have to take that with a grain of salt because you mentioned that they weren't playing Premier teams. Or well, they were playing Premier teams. It's just that some of their players were playing the IPL. But then again, that's not on Pakistan. Even though Babar, I don't consider him to be a great captain. I did think that he deserved to be captain in the World Cup, and I just feel like they didn't give him enough confidence, particularly when Nauraiz Rana was sacked. Neither of Najam Sethi or Zaka Ashraf gave him that sort of confidence, and they kind of set him up for failure. England series that started in December last year. Pakistan got whitewashed for the first time in a test series at home versus England. They lost 3-0. Then they drew a series versus New Zealand, which they could have lost. So things were looking quite bleak. But what I'd like to highlight in this year of Pakistan cricket in particular is the musical or the game of musical chairman that they've played. And it was like they were switching chairmen more frequently than they were captains. And you can't always say that about Pakistan cricket, right? I would say that there has been a big shift. It's a turn of events because Pakistan had never qualified for the qualifiers of the FIFA World Cup, okay? Pakistan is the only nation associated with FIFA that does not have a functional league in its country. The fact that you have gone and defeated Cambodia in that preliminary qualifier to qualify for the qualifiers, that's huge on its own. Hockey is dead, right? That's where it's at right now. Of course, Pakistan still has 4 Hockey World Cups, which is the most by any country. I think they're tied with another country. Maybe it's Germany or Australia, I can't recall. So they still have 4 World Cups. They have rich heritage and history when it comes to hockey. It is Pakistan's national sport. Franchise hockey league, I think it's a great idea. What the owners need to do is first make it accessible for fans, right? Market it really well. It should be on TV. I should see posters everywhere. And there should be some sort of offers on coming to watch that, hey, if you come, this can happen. Like you could win a free XYZ. They should put in that effort because in order to build fanfare, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a period of time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nauraiz Rana, and I'll be hosting today's program on New Wave. As many of you have been following, we've been covering a lot of grave issues that have been unfolding all around the world. There's this Israel-Gaza conflict that is happening in real time. Other than that, Pakistan's facing a lot of economic turmoil. But in today's program, we wanted to pivot towards a more light touch topic, kind of lighten up the mood and kind of try to end the year on a little more positivity than what is happening around us, just a little break, little mental break. And there's nothing better than talking about cricket, football, hockey, and other sporting activities that Pakistan is part of. So in today's program, as you may have guessed, we'll be doing a 2023 sports roundup. And joining me today, I have a very special guest, to say so. He's a great budding sports journalist who has been anchoring various shows. He's been writing articles on sports development in Pakistan and has been traveling with the Pakistan team as well, covering cricket, commentating on football and whatnot. So thank you so much for joining us, Behram. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to be here as well, Nauraiz. And I haven't been on many shows like this, which are more so holistic and will talk about sport quite broadly. So I'm excited.
No, for sure. So, and I'm going to let you drive this entire show because you're the real sector expert. I'm not the one. But let me put it out there that let's start with cricket first. So Pakistan has played a number of series during this calendar year, some away series, some home series, and they've had mixed results. So we started off the year playing against New Zealand. I don't remember things at the top of my head, so I have had them written down. We won the first one. We actually lost the 1-2. Then we won against Afghanistan 3-0. Then there was another series against New Zealand, which Pakistan won 4-1. But at that time, it was touted that New Zealand had sent their B team. We'll get in the details, but just to highlight that 4-1 wasn't celebrated as much as it should have been. But then, as the year progressed, there was kind of an abysmal performance. Pakistan could not make it to the finals of the Asia Cup. And what happened in the very recently concluded World Cup, we are pretty much all well aware of that. We lost to Afghanistan. We lost to a lot of teams who weren't faring well themselves. England, for instance, and thus could not qualify for the semis too. So that was a very overarching, quick summary. But what do you think? Have Pakistan, the cricket team, has fared, and what are the reasons why have they been the way that they've played the way they have.
Well, you've pretty much covered it all, but I'll give you a sort of holistic, I don't know, assessment. So there have been more low points than high, let's be honest. You missed the England series that started in December last year.
Oh, yeah.
Pakistan got whitewashed for the first time in a test series at home versus England. They lost 3-0. Then they drew a series versus New Zealand, which they could have lost. So things were looking quite bleak. Yes, they did become number one in the ODI rankings this year. But then again, you have to take that with a grain of salt because you mentioned that they weren't playing Premier teams. Or well, they were playing Premier teams. It's just that, some of their players were playing the IPL. But then again, that's not on Pakistan. And I think their victory should be celebrated just as much. And ultimately, if you did rise to the number one rankings in ODI cricket, it should be celebrated. Sure, there are caveats to it, but I still think that if you get to the top of the rankings, there should be some sort of applause for the team. And I think that maybe they didn't get enough of it. Now, those were the high points, right? There was a series win versus Afghanistan 3-0 that you mentioned. Naseem Shah once again won you a game in that game, in that series. And then, of course, the whitewash against Sri Lanka. They defeated Sri Lanka in 2 tests in Sri Lanka, which is always a daunting task, regardless of what sort of Sri Lankan team is playing, because they're a sturdy opposition in their own backyard. So barring number one in ODIs and the Sri Lankan whitewash, there wasn't much to write home about. It was very abysmal, rightly pointed out by you, performance by Pakistan in the World Cup, only 4 wins out of 9. And that does not make for good reading at all. And then apart from that as well, in the Asia Cup, everyone expected them to play the final. But what I'd like to highlight in this year of Pakistan cricket in particular is the musical or the game of musical chairman that they've played. And it was like they were switching chairmen more frequently than they were captains. And you can't always say that about Pakistan cricket, right? Because the opposite is mostly true. But I felt that even though Babar, I don't consider him to be a great captain, I did think that he deserved to be captain in the World Cup. And I just feel like they didn't give him enough confidence, particularly when Ramiz Raja was sacked. Neither of Najam Sethi or Zaka Ashraf gave him that sort of confidence, and they kind of set him up for failure. They definitely did not set him up for success. Let's just put it that way. So the instability and volatility at the PCB definitely hampered Pakistan's performances to some degree. I'm not saying that's the reason they only won 4 games out of 9. There were other reasons as well. The lack of a spinner really was one of the big ones, and the batting could not come good the way we expected it to come. Like Babar Azam had a stinker by his standards. Imamul Haq, who was scoring consistent runs, failed at the World Cup. Fakhr was dropped, came back, won you some games. But again, I would have backed him all the way through. But the good part was that you did kind of unearth Abdullah Shafiq. And basically what we saw was that once Pakistan lost Naseem Shah, it exposed Shaheen Shah, Afridi and Haris Rauf, who weren't at their best. Having Naseem in that team, who was an all-phase superstar in ODI cricket, whether you give him the new ball, whether you bowl him in the middle or at the death, he is just a 10-on-10 sort of bowler. And he had been stellar in ODI cricket. Like, I can't remember the numbers on the top of my head, but I think in 14 outings, he had 32 wickets. And he was breaking records on records. And Naseem is still developing. That's the exciting part, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he's injured and everything. Yeah. But the good part is that he's still young. He's 21 and there's tons of time for him to develop. So whilst I do think Pakistan cricket is still on the rise, the trajectory is towards, the upper side. I think that this year is, one that supporters will probably want to forget because the expectations were high and the team did not live up to them. But then again, it's a sport. And that's what I keep reminding people, that you experience troughs and crests in sport. It's very normal. If you look at the last 2 years in the T20 World Cups that have gone by, Pakistan made the semi and made the final. Sure, they should have won that semi versus Australia, their World Cup, to lose that one, and they did. And in 2022, they lost to the best team. England was by far the best outfit in that World Cup. So, I mean, this is still a good team. They had a bad tournament, and there are some glaring issues which need to be addressed. The spin bowling conundrum is probably front and center. And, once Naseem Shah comes back, this team looks a hell of a lot better. So I would say that, loyal supporters will obviously not desert or abandon Pakistan. Especially, we're now about to play a test series in Australia, and they haven't won a test match since Sydney 95. They've lost 14 test matches in a row. So expectations are non-existent. So maybe this takes the pressure off the boys and they can go express themselves and play some attractive or competitive cricket. Can't say anything for sure. Cricket is not played on paper. Australia should win this 3-0, but you never know with sport, and that's the beauty of it.
All right. So when we talk about cricket, you've covered a lot. You've covered ODIs, T20s, and Tests. But when we say cricket, cricket has further classified into these various, little branches. And 2022, we ended the year, kind of on a high. We were the finalists in the Cricket World Cup, T20 World Cup. Let me rephrase that. But then, do you think we're a good T20 team, but we're actually not a equally good ODI team? Because the players that we have identified over the years who've been embedded in the Pakistan team, they came through the PSL, and PSL is a T20 league primarily, right? Not primarily, it is only a T20 league. And
yeah, I mean, it's a
yeah.
Go for
So,
it. Yeah.
the players, even if we look at our bowling cadre, we have Shaheen Shah, we have Haris Rauf, who are like great bowlers. But it's very different bowling in a match where you only need to deliver 4 overs versus you need a different mindset, you need a different strategy, you need a different skill set when you're bowling 10 overs, and then entirely different when you're bowling in a test match. So what is your take? Do you think all of them, both our batsmen and our bowlers, are equally good, or there should be some changes in the sides when we're transferring from T20 to ODIs? And yeah, so that's my first question. Yeah, an offshoot question first.
In an ideal world, you would have a specialized team or unit for each format. Test cricket in particular, because it's longer, it's more prestigious, it's more grueling. It really tests a cricketer. You would know, you've played a lot of cricket, right? And T20 is a bit easier in that regard. You can make more mistakes, and you can have more off days, because that's the nature of the format. By design, you are supposed to fail more. ODI cricket, I actually thought Pakistan had a really settled squad before the Asia Cup, and losing Naseem obviously exposed them. Both your spin bowling all-rounders had an absolute howler, right? Iftikhar was your best spinner at the World Cup, and that tells you a story. Now, let's take the spin bowling aside, and you asked whether or not Pakistan are a great limited over side. First of all, I think let's put this World Cup aside. They were really doing well in ODIs. I still feel like they underperformed. You would expect them to win a minimum of 5 games out of 9. They didn't. Sure, whatever. Lots of stuff didn't go their way. They hadn't played in India before. Bowlers or pacers didn't find their lengths. And the spinners were far too inconsistent with their lengths as well. Lots of full tosses, lots of drag backs. But when you look at Pakistan as a limited overs outfit, I'm not talking about Test cricket right now, because Test cricket, we're going through a revamp anyway. Pakistan is, this is not a settled squad by any means. Yes, they've had 2 victories in Sri Lanka, but a lot of these guys are inexperienced, and it will take time to blood them. And they should continue to blood them. There's no 2 ways about that. When it comes to limited overs cricket, Pakistan is a team that has historically and even recently relied heavily on its strike bowling, right? In the T20 World Cup, you made it that far on, at least the second occasion in Australia, because you were bowling really, really well. It was hard to score off you. And ultimately, you just needed power scores to win games. Pakistan's scoring rate in limited overs cricket is at par at best. It's towards the conservative side. Let's not joke about, it's very glaringly or blatantly obvious, right? I don't need to make a point over here.
That's how it's always been, and they've failed to kind of evolve with the times.
Yeah. And I think that the strike bowling in particular, getting wickets at regular intervals kind of masks that. And you could still, I have no issues with this style of play if your strike bowlers are firing. If your strike bowlers are not firing, you're always behind the 8 ball, because other teams are scoring at higher rates, and you're always going to be catching up. You're going to be, behind the 8 ball, or I can't come up with a better analogy right now. But that's where I feel like they will probably have to evolve a bit. You've got young batters like Mohammad Haris, and Saim Ayub, and some other youngsters who are just coming through. You've got to ultimately pivot towards that style of play. How they'll do it, I have no idea. I hope they're thinking along those lines. And you've got to evolve with the game. A lot of people must have heard a famous saying, adapt or die. Pakistan have been, what's the right phrase over here? A lot of blemishes have been avoided because Pakistan's bowling saves them on occasion. And sure, your ODI team has some great batting output in the last 4 years previously, before the World Cup, obviously. I'm not talking about the World Cup. But then again, if the scoring rate isn't upped, then you can't really put teams under pressure in the batting power play. as a batting unit. And that's where I felt Pakistan lacked in this World Cup as well. If you see a lot of teams, they prioritize the batting power play in the India World Cup, and they got the rewards for it. There are many games in which the scoring had stopped in the middle overs, and towards the death it had died down. So those power play runs were key. Pakistan does not follow that template, and they have some soul searching to do with respect to what brand of cricket they want to play moving forward. And I think those are questions for the team management and the new skippers to answer.
So you actually mentioned the phrase adapt to die. I think that's a great segue for me to come to my next point is we have now two new captains. Babar Azam has been replaced. And one of the key criticism against him is the fact that he follows a very set plan and fails to adapt to the situation as the game evolves right there and then. And, this can be based on personal perception, but I think I've witnessed that too in the final against England in the T20 World Cup. It felt that he was aiming to go through the entire 20 overs while the match would have been over going in either direction much before that. In some of the games in the World Cup, we saw that too, where Pakistan could have really capitalized by taking on their paces, bringing them back on, but he let that slip away by bringing in the spinners in the middle overs, letting the batsmen settle, and then when the pacers came back into attack, there wasn't much damage that they could do. So, is that criticism justified? And now that we have new captains, how do we view that? Do you think? Babar Azam had a good run. He was the captain for quite some time, and he was given that confidence by he was assured again and again, time and again that the board is behind you, regardless whosoever was the chairman. But and he got a clear run up until the World Cup, and he failed to perform. So, what's your take on that?
I mean, let's say for starters, Babar did fail as a batter, right? Forget the captaincy. Those aren't the standards that Babar Azam has set over the years. This was a guy who was averaging nearly 60 in ODI cricket prior to the World Cup. He did not score many runs. There were a few isolated 50s in there, but none of them really created an impact. So, of course, criticism does go to Babar, the batter, that, on the biggest stage of them all, he couldn't show the world what he's capable of, because I do believe he's an elite batter. Let's not make any mistake over there. As far as his captaincy is concerned, I think you were right to point out that he was given a good run. And in those 4 years, for the first 3 years or so, I think he was given a lot of confidence as well. Babar was not a natural leader, but he grew into that role. I think he was a great rallier of men. The whole unity bit and keeping the team gel together, he nailed it. He gets 11 out of 10 on it. But when it comes to tactical things, or just as a tactician, I think Babar was lacking. You were very right to point out how often in the ODIs that we've witnessed in recent times, he let opposition go into cruise control in the middle overs. And you're also right to point out that he has a solid plan A. And when plan A is working, there are no issues. But when plan A fails, there doesn't seem to be any contingency plan. And he seems to be more reactive than proactive. And the field settings too weren't as attacking as many, including myself, would have liked. Now, was he a great captain? No, but I don't think he was a terrible captain either. I think he did a decent job. He, performed to his potential as captain. And the World Cup, sure, it was one of the reasons Babar's captaincy why Pakistan was so bad. But was it worse than your bowlers, giving batters width and spraying the ball down leg? That's not something Babar can control. And also the fact that the batting had been really, really good coming into that World Cup for 4 to 6 years. And they just failed big time at the World Cup. The fielding was bad on many an occasion. Spinners were non-existent. So these are also issues, and perhaps bigger issues than Babar's captaincy. But of course, you need to highlight his captaincy because he needs to take accountability and ownership. And I'm sure that, that would have been his not body language. That would have been something that he would have acknowledged, I feel. He would have taken that on the chin. And he resigned very gracefully, even though the PCB issued a press release that they fired him from the white ball teams, and he said no to continue to lead the test team. So yeah, there's a lot of bad blood over there, and we could do an entire podcast separately on what all the PCB have done wrong. I've probably said it in many podcasts, so if you guys really go skim through my work, you'll find it. Go to the Pro Sports one. I'm really vocal over there about this stuff. But anyway, moving on to the new captains. Look, Shan Masood came back into the team on merit. He performed for Derbyshire. Then he's gone on to skipper Yorkshire and has performed well over there. And he's a guy who's continuously reinvented himself over the years. What he has reinvented himself into is still something I'm keen to see. But right now, you had a void left by Azhar Ali at number 3, and there was no obvious candidate. You hadn't prepared anyone either, so Shan was going to start these tests. Now that you've made him test captain, give him a good run. Give him this World Test Championship cycle. Even if he fails as a batter, you have to give him that sort of confidence, and continuity is key. If he fails in the cycle, then in the next cycle, you can go with someone else. As far as Shaheen is concerned, he has won 2 consecutive PSLs. The only concern I have with respect to him as T20 captain is that he'll have to play every game, and bilateral T20s are quite useless. And I want to wrap Shaheen up in cotton wool because I want him to play every test match for Pakistan. And he's also an imperative member of the ODI unit. Sure, he doesn't have that same kind of rhythm right now that we've gotten used to. Peak Shaheen is a different animal altogether. Let's hope he can find that mojo in Australia. But he's a good choice for T20 captain, but I would not play him every game still. Whoever you make vice captain, just kind of keep resting Shaheen, right? And maybe rethink this idea after this World Cup, the T20 World Cup. That's just my 2 cents on it, because I don't want him to burn himself out. And that could be very likely if he's captaining the T20 side. What's more bizarre is that Pakistan haven't announced an ODI captain, and we don't play an ODI till November 2024. So these are all major blunders, and someone needs to, hold the PCB accountable at this point, because we're all stakeholders here with respect to Pakistan cricket. Nothing unites Pakistanis more than this sport, right? It's part of Pakistani identity at this point. You feel things in your body. Jazba, jis tarah kehte hain Urdu mein. So, yeah, I mean, someone needs to fix this mess, because right now it's gotten far too political, and there's just some new news every day, and they seem to stoop lower or to some lower depth than before. I mean, the whole Salman Butt saga was quite... I don't even have words for it at this point.
I mean, the thing is that we can't really circumvent what's happening in Pakistan's political landscape and kind of detach that from what's happening in PCB, because it's like a clear and exact reflection, actually not even a reflection, a continuation of the political landscape, and we can't really, there's no other way to avoid that.
I mean, Nauraiz, think about it. Your patron-in-chief of the PCB is your stand-in prime minister. It's always going to be volatile that way. A new prime minister will come in, they'll bring their entire new board, and there will be volatility, there will be instability, because that new person will say that I want my own people.
And frankly speaking, like, this is what's going to happen. The elections are like a couple of months away, and then when there's a new regime, the new prime minister comes in, there's a new party, there's inevitably they are going to be changes at the PCB,
Absolutely.
the PCB too.
That is why the constitution of the PCB is the problem. You just take it away from the hands of the politicians, and as long as there is some sort of stability, some good will come out of it. This way, everyone undoes the work that their predecessor has done, and that's just not a viable, a sustainable sort of structure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then with everything political, the other perils that come along, there's rent seeking, then there's political motives, and then there's patriotism and whatnot.
Yeah.
So again, that's an entirely different discussion, but let's stick to the good things. So before we wrap up cricket, how would you rate overall Pakistan's performance out of 10 in the year 2023?
4 to 5.
4 to 5. Oh, that's bad.
I'm being lenient over here. I think this squad is a golden generation for Pakistan, even if the results don't suggest that. I do think that, this team has a lot of gems in it. You have some out-and-out superstars, and just based on that, I still have some hope going into the future. But if you just look at the results this year, then like I mentioned earlier, there have been very few highs, and 4 to 5 just sounds about right. It's apt.
Fair enough.
What about you? How much will you rate them?
I think 4 to 5 is actually a very decent approximation, or an estimation of where to rank them. But actually, I think you're being way too lenient by crediting the players and saying that that we have some gems. I mean, I don't want to sound too cynical or too critical, but I think there was potential, but that potential wasn't really translated into actual performances, and we can only kind of verify that based on performances, how good a player is. And we've seen that we've terribly lacked in the spin department. Again, not to sound too critical, but I think Shadab really was a letdown. Much was expected from him, but then, at this level, you can't expect to see your spinners throwing in 2 to 3 full tosses every here and now. I mean, you can't afford to drop catches at the international level. That's, not what you're like the best 11 out of a population of, 250 million. And, there's more that you need to be accountable for.
And I
And
don't think your
yeah,
criticism is unfair at all. It's your opinion, obviously, and you
yeah,
didn't get personal. That's what a lot of
yeah,
people in Pakistan
yeah,
do. They get super personal. That's where you draw
yeah.
the line. You
Oh
talked
yeah,
about
yeah, no,
everything in cricketing terms and you gave your
yeah,
opinion, and there's
yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I think there has to be greater accountability. Then those players can
Hmm.
come back, work on themselves and maybe come back more stronger. They
Hmm.
need to take this positively.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that cancel culture is just something very different in Pakistan that has
Hmm.
kind of pervaded and is growing more and more, courtesy social media.
Hmm.
But yeah, but okay, now let's move to football. So there were
Hmm.
some good things happening there as well. Pakistan, for the first time after I think 15 years or so, won a World Cup qualifier. Uh, and they played I think about 3 or 4 matches. They didn't qualify for the World Cup, of course, but how do you see how do you witness that happening in Pakistan? Is there a new is the tide is it shifting? Is the game of football growing in Pakistan in the future? Can we expect Pakistan to ever be playing at the FIFA World Cup? Maybe not right now, of course, but 10, 20, 30 years down the line.
I would say that there has been a big shift. Like it's a turn of events because Pakistan had never qualified for the qualifiers of the FIFA
Yeah,
World Cup. Okay. And
yeah.
they don't, oh, well, Pakistan is the only nation associated with FIFA that does not have a functional league in its country. The fact that you have gone and defeated Cambodia in that preliminary qualifier to qualify for the qualifiers,
Mm.
that's huge on its own. I mean, they have
Mm.
no business winning that game, Pakistan's players. And a big reason for that also is because Pakistan has tapped into some diaspora talent. A lot of people
Mm.
don't like that, but I'm all for it. If you look at Morocco's team that made the semifinals of the FIFA World Cup, there's a lot of
Yeah.
French diaspora over there. In fact, that's the majority of that team, isn't it?
Mm.
So I'm all for that. In fact, even if someone is 1/4 or 1/8 Pakistani ethnically, get them in the team, because you don't have a functional league over here. Anyone who plays football week in, week out is obviously, their body is match ready and match fit. And that's where Pakistan lacked. Of course, they're still not out of it, by the way. They could, in theory,
Mm.
qualify for the World Cup.
Mm.
But once they defeated Cambodia, they came into a World Cup qualifying group with Saudi Arabia, who, of course, defeated Argentina in
Mm.
the recently concluded FIFA World Cup just last year. And Argentina won that World Cup, right? So they lost 4-0 to Saudi Arabia, but for the longest time, they were 2-0. I
Mm.
thought they did pretty well against quality opposition. And Roberto Mancini is managing that team alongside his assistant, I think, is Yaya Toure. So whenever those guys come to Pakistan, that's going to be a spectacle, right? People will just turn up to just look at Mancini and Yaya Toure. And I've seen a lot of people develop interest for Pakistan football, myself included. I didn't really know much about it. But then I've been, doing a lot of sports stuff in Pakistan. It's been primarily cricket, but I've been trying to branch out and hustle as much as I possibly can. And the football and opportunity kind of just came into my lap because the rest of the world broadcast, not Pakistan broadcast, PTV was doing Pakistan broadcast, but the rest of the world broadcast for the Pakistan versus Tajikistan game in the actual qualifiers, which Pakistan lost. I think it was 6-1 or something. I got to do commentary for that. And that was a great experience because I had to do tons of homework prior. I had to get all the pronunciations right. And the Tajik players have some really tough names. And I needed to learn everything about Pakistan's players and, what are their strengths? What is their history? Where do they play their football? Now, the chairman at this point, Haroon Malik, has hinted towards starting a league soon. It's not happening right now, but once that does happen, maybe it can be marketed well. You can, garner more interest or create more of hype around it. And that way you can grow the game in Pakistan because as soon as, TV rights come into the picture, it's a different ball game. And that's the major step that they need to take if they want to evolve. I have no expectation of them making it into the World Cup, and maybe it'll take another 30 years for that to happen because everyone is, far ahead of Pakistan in terms of pipelines. You cannot have a football team without a pipeline. Pakistan doesn't have one, and that's why the league is important. So once the league is created, then some work can be done, and I can see a future in which there are lots of job opportunities for people within the football spectrum as well. Some people care about it really passionately. You've got Shayan Obaid Alexander, who has a channel on this, Shahrukh Sohail, Faizan Samir Malik, all of these guys, they've worked really hard to make football popular in Pakistan. And I salute them because even I didn't know much prior to this whole season. But now I'm kind of directly involved in it because I commented on a game, and hopefully I'll get to comment on some more games whenever football returns to Pakistan. But they'll be playing 4 more qualifiers, 2 more in Pakistan, and then 1 in Tajikistan and 1 in Jordan. That'll happen next year. So let's see. They should probably, arrange some floodlights, etc., in the ground so that when the summer months come by, they can have those games at night. Otherwise, you're killing the players literally. And also just tap into more of that diaspora. Until you have a league, you really need those players, and don't create issues for them, right? Every country in the world does this, particularly the African countries. So why should Pakistan stay behind? And I think that there is a lot of potential. It's just untapped, and the lack of structure and infrastructure hampers that progress.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's great news that it is one of the most popular sports in the world, and now it is garnering the same kind of attention in Pakistan. And it has been long overdue. And it all comes to the lack of infrastructure and administrative impediments and barriers that have, the focus has always been on cricket. The funds have always been there.
Pakistan were banned, right? You know this, right? The football team was banned not too long ago. So that tells you a story on its own.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a chicken and egg situation. You really need to mobilize everything, the funds, infrastructure, all in alignment with one another, and kind of market it to the people. And I'm very much on board. I think you need to bring those players from the diaspora segment of Pakistan population who have their own following, who are obviously who've been trained, who've had that opportunity, which other players do not, and they can kind of transfer that same learnings to local players as well. So I think it's a win-win for everyone.
I'll tell you what, though, the manager, the coach of Pakistan, Stephen Constantine, he's a real gem. They need to hold on to him, and he can perhaps deliver some sort of outrageous result. And even this Cambodia win, I would credit a lot of it to him, because he's brought some sort of structure to the way Pakistan plays. It's a lot of long balls, but he has to make the most of his resources, right? He has to optimize them. And he hasn't been given much to work with, yet he's gotten Pakistan to this stage. So I hope they continue to back Stephen Constantine.
Awesome. So I think that's better news than, it's less disappointing than what's happened in the cricket affair. So, and, hoping that it really kind of gets that boost that it rightly needs.
It was unprecedented, right? We have to keep mentioning that them reaching the World Cup qualifiers on its own is unprecedented, and therefore must be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, without much support from from the association itself, from the Pakistan Association, from the Federation.
You're talking about support. Look at Arshad Nadeem. He's achieved so much. He's won so many gold, or not gold medals, but silver medals. He's always behind Neeraj Chopra, who is honestly one of the best this sport has probably ever seen, javelin throws. And even in the Asian Games recently, he won silver, Arshad Nadeem, and he hasn't been really backed or supported either. So it's quite depressing when you come to think of it. It's very underwhelming that Pakistan does not have an existing system to help or aid its athletes.
And we've seen that across multitude of the various sporting activities. We had like a box. We had world-renowned boxers who had a lot of potential, but then they were lost in oblivion. And we've seen how we've lost our reigns over squash. We were the world champions for the longest time, but we weren't really able to translate that into the next generation.
Well, there is a kid right now. His name is Hamza, and he just won the World Junior Squash Championship or something. I might have this wrong, so excuse me if I've messed up the name of the tournament, but he won that. And then your hockey team, your junior hockey team, just made it to the quarterfinals of the Junior Hockey World Cup. So there is still some hope, but you need to cash in. If you don't give these young, sports people the avenues and some sort of structure to come and showcase their talent and improve as sports people, then they're not going to get nurtured and groomed in the right way. And you're just going to keep missing out on talent year in, year out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I did a separate program on sports economy, with someone who was actually the managing director of the PSL, the very first PSL. And we very, very much spoke about the same issue that, for Pakistan, any particular sports need to be considered as a special revenue generating economic sector, because you invest more, you reap more out of it, but there's just not been enough attention, and we've really not capitalized on all the various avenues that it had to offer. We look at Neeraj Chopra, he has all the biggest endorsements coming from all the foreign brands. So it's a form of foreign FDI, right? That's coming in. If, Neeraj Chopra is your local, is your asset, and whoever is funding him, supporting him, is bringing in US dollars that we badly need. if Ashton Ream had the same opportunity, Pakistan would definitely have benefited, even as a whole, the sport itself. But
Even
now,
your snooker players were some of the best in the world. You did nothing for them, right?
yeah. But anyhow, now coming back to hockey, our national sport, just sharing some insight. I'm sure you must be aware. So basically, the same team who formulated and created the very first PSL, it was led by Saman Sabarbard and Horace May. They are setting up hockey league by the name of Max, and very same format, franchise systems, foreign players, and they're crafting it, and they've valued it at over $50 million for now, which in a Pakistan perspective is a huge sum. And
Yeah.
let's not compare it to India. India is a different giant altogether. But for Pakistan, it's huge and it's healthy, and it kind of ushers that hockey might be revived in Pakistan, and we may be able to get back to the same roles that we once had. But how have you seen hockey, evolving over the last 1 year? Anything Pakistan has done that should be highlighted, or any areas of improvement?
I mean, hockey is dead, right? That's where it's at right now. And when I was growing up, Pakistan had exited their golden era. Of course, Pakistan still has 4 hockey World Cups, which is the most by any country. I think they're tied with another country. Maybe it's Germany or Australia. I can't recall. So they still have 4 World Cups. They have rich heritage and history when it comes to hockey. It is Pakistan's national sport. And it's again that whole adapt or die conversation. We always hear that, oh, there's been some conspiracy with AstroTurf, this and that. Make more AstroTurfs in Pakistan. Help your people adapt to it. Don't cry wolf all the time. And this is a bone I have to pick with all Pakistanis, or not all. I don't want to paint everyone with the same paintbrush, but my general observation has been that the majority does not like to take ownership and accountability and just likes to point fingers. And it's always some sort of conspiracy with Pakistanis. They're really infatuated with this idea, and it just doesn't sit well with me. So you're mentioning this franchise hockey league. I think it's a great idea. What the owners need to do is first make it accessible for fans, right? Market it really well. It should be on TV. I should see posters everywhere, and there should be some sort of offers on coming to watch that, hey, if you come, this can happen. Like you could win a free XYZ. They should put in that effort, because in order to build fanfare, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a period of time. If you look at the PSL now, we're about to start the 9th season, and now you can see some hardcore fans, and people are really, engulfed with all of the PSL trade and retentions drama, and everyone's tuning into the draft. It wasn't always that way. And hockey is not even that popular a sport globally. But Pakistan, given that it's our national sport, and Pakistan has been really good at it once upon a time, it could be revived. And you pump in some money into it, you market it the right way, you sell it to TapMad, for instance, right? Everyone watches TapMad now in this country, and streaming services is where it's at. TV is going to die, right? Let's be real. We've seen it happen in the West and North America, particularly. I don't know what it's like in Europe, but when I was in Canada, and I was there for 11 years, and as were you for quite a while, we saw that right in front of our eyes, how TV just died. And it's going to happen inevitably in Pakistan. Even now, you see a lot of people tune into, political YouTube channels as opposed to the talk shows on TV. And even for sport, that's changing. We're not there yet, but it's slowly changing, where the podcast market is increasing. So hockey should definitely, it should be revived. It's an absolute no-brainer. Sports should be diversified in Pakistan. It shouldn't just be a cricketing nation. And if you do build a franchise league, Pakistani local players will get to play with the best players in the world, or at least some sort of foreign talent. And they could learn a lot in terms of work ethic and professionalism, because that's where I feel Pakistani athletes lack. And if they can learn those things, then sky is the limit. Like you said, 250 million population. And hockey is one of those sports where you could still have some raw talent because of the history. And if you revive the sport on TVs or what streaming services, young kids could watch it, and they could start idolizing someone and become the next Sohail Abbas or Shakil Abbasi. Like when I was growing up, they were a decent team. They were a bronze medal level team. They were third always.
And they were playing the Champions Trophy. They were playing the Olympics. They were playing the World Cups.
They won the Rabobank Trophy, which I think became the Champions Trophy in front of my eyes. They won it in Australia, if I'm not wrong. And then they just faded away into oblivion, and that needs to change. And now that the young boys, the junior hockey team has done well, they've reached the quarters, that's something you can build on, and you can pump some money into this. And again, same sort of criticism. Build structure, build infrastructure, and ultimately you'll have a pipeline. Once you have a pipeline, new players will always start coming into the system. And that's how sports teams work. There's no other way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can't agree more with everything that you mentioned. I think that is the way to go about it and approach things, and especially kind of to help develop Pakistan across the various facets that have failed. Hockey being one of them. I mean, we were one of the best countries in the world, and it's not just one. So we've seen that continuous downhill. We've been just spiraling downwards, and I'm fearful that we might not just experience the same in cricket too. I hope we can recover before it's too late. But
When it
anyhow,
comes
I think
to when it comes to spiraling downwards with respect to Pakistan, it seems like an abyss. You feel like this is rock bottom, but it isn't. And
oh
that's what
yeah,
scares me.
yeah, oh yeah. Every time there's a new dip. But I think overall, 2023 was an eventful year. There's some catching ups to do across, cricket, football, hockey, and various other sports as well, Olympic sports. And I hope that our administrations who are in charge can give it the due credit, make sure that wherever there's infrastructure lacking, they invest. Wherever
Yep.
there's need to invest in human capital, they do that. They build the pipeline of players and make sure that the fruits are shared across everyone. And it's not just concentrated in one particular region or one particular city.
Yeah.
You have to make sports inclusive. That's a part of it.
Sport unites people. It's a great uniting sort of I don't want to say construct because it's tangible, but you get the drift, right? Sport is
Yeah.
supposed to bring people closer from across different cultures, races, religions. And it's a great, form of expressing your, well, I don't want to use the words patriotism or nationalism because I've kind of drifted away from that school of thought. But, back in the day, there was war. There was a lot of war. This is the best alternative.
Mm. I mean, it does kind of give you a sense of belonging, right? When you have a certain team that is representing you or the area
Yeah.
where you're from, area defined by national boundaries. It does give you, and kind of does bring you happiness when your team fares well. But so before we wrap up, actually, I want to do one last segment with you on your personal journey. So you were based in Canada. You were there for quite a bit. By training, you're an engineer, and then you switched, decided to come back to Pakistan and pursue sports journalism. So what was the motivation, and how has that fared so far? How are you enjoying it? How are you feeling about it? What are
I
some of the challenges and so challenges and things that you enjoy?
I mean, I am really enjoying it. I'll be real with
Mm.
you. I'm loving life at the moment, but it wasn't a spontaneous move. I always wanted this as a kid. I was obsessed with sport. I was a nerd on sport, right? I wasn't an athlete by any means. You've played cricket with me. I was not that great. My bowling action was suspect. And
But still, you were better than many others.
I suppose so. I mean, we won a tournament. I still have that medal somewhere with the boys. That was what our team's name was, ironically. But yeah, so I was in Canada when I first worked in cricket. I didn't get paid for it back in the day, but in 2013, I published my first piece for Blogs Tribune, and that used to be big back in the day. Everyone used to read Blogs Tribune. And 2013 to 2017, I wrote for them intermittently. There are probably around 25 to 26 op-eds that I have on Blogs Tribune. You can search my name, Behram Qazi, on Google. Maybe some of that stuff pops up. Or, at that same point, when I went back to Pakistan in the summer of 2014, I took a term off. I got the opportunity to, work as an analyst or sports analyst on PTV World, Pakistan's only English channel at that point, maybe still, I don't know. I don't watch TV anymore. But I had that exposure in front of the camera, which really helped. And I didn't get paid for that either. But I also, whenever I was in Pakistan, I would go and spend some time in that studio till 2017 specifically. So Blogs Tribune was 13 to 17. And then PTV World was 14 to like end of 16, something like that. So that's all I did up until that point for no money. And this was just my own passion. And I could always envision myself. Like I used to have a vision board back in the day in high school in which I had like a photo of John Dykes from ESPN. I just wanted to be John Dykes. I wanted to be in that role. So it was something I always wanted and always yearned for. But you know how Pakistani parents are not, keen on letting their children take radical career paths. So hence I came to the University of Waterloo to study management engineering. And when I graduated in 2016 and I got a job in the corporate sector, which was like tech corporate, right? Not corporate, software development lifecycle. I worked in that for 6 years, digital delivery, all of that stuff. And 2017 to 2021, I focused on my corporate career and I did not do anything in cricket. I did watch it, very passionately, as I have since 2002, 2003. So it's been 2 decades now. And I feel quite old saying that. But yeah, so whilst I was focusing on my corporate career, anyone who's worked in corporate will know that 9 to 5 doesn't mean 9 to 5. You work long hours. You don't really have any more bandwidth. So COVID helped. After a year of working from home in 2021, July 2021, I thought to myself, if I want to move back and pursue cricket as a career or cricket coverage as a career, I need to start doing something. And that's when I created my own cricket channel on YouTube called Qazi Diaries. And in half a year, I churned out 94 videos. So it was more than a video every other day. So I went crazy. I started to hustle like crazy and I was barely getting any sleep. I did not have any social life either, because after my 9 to 5, even if it was working from home, it was basically that's all my life was. There's my day job and then I'm creating cricket content at night, late into the night. And then I'm trying to watch cricket as well. So it was very exhausting in that regard.
That's quite commendable and inspirational too for everyone who wants to follow a similar trajectory and a path.
I mean,
you need to put in the hours and do the hard work, right?
You have to hustle. You have to force yourself into this industry because there's no job opportunity over here that you can apply for. There's no clear roadmap. All the things that I'm doing, I'm working for 3 different platforms, creating podcasts. My job title never existed before I did, right? I created it for myself. And the only reason why that happened for me is because I got tons of practice in, I hustled hard, and eventually Grassroots Cricket, Ali Tareen's project, they have a social media page on every platform, and we also create video content on YouTube. They hired me as their video content creator initially, and now I'm the video content lead. Worked for them for a solid year, then came back to Pakistan. When I came back to Pakistan, I said that, hey, I want to go cover the games from the stadia, so make me a press pass. I don't care for the money right now. They made me a press pass. I went to all the games. I hustled hard, fan cam interviews, press conference questions, which gave me great traction. And I was also writing daily. Every single day, I would write something. So I was like doing my best to set myself up for success. And that resulted in some good news for me, right? Grassroots, I continue to do to this day. I'm still their video content lead, but on top, I got a gig with Jared Kimber, pretty much the rock star of cricket journalism. So I create podcasts with him for his podcast channel, and I help him around with other stuff as well. So that's 2 streams of income. Plus, I also create podcasts with Pro Sports Pakistan. So that's 3 streams of income now, along with the occasional piece for Dawn. So they'll sometimes tell me that, hey, we want you to write about this. They'll pay me for the piece, and it's like what's the word for
peanuts?
What's that word? Freelance. Yeah. Freelancing my way through life. And at this point, I feel like I've set myself up well. And initially, if, I was just kind of shooting arrows relentlessly with no target in sight, I see a target now. There's light at the end of this tunnel, and I feel like I can make it because I don't focus on sensationalism. And that's what this entire industry does in Pakistan for the most part. There are some people who don't do it, but the vast majority is focused on masala and sensationalism, and they'll talk about anything and everything but cricket. Whereas I am trying to, have intelligent cricket discourse. I'm trying to enrich the game for people who watch my content, and my intentions are clean. I'm trying to change the landscape of cricket coverage in Pakistan. And whilst the growth is slow, it's organic. And then the following that you build is very loyal. And I feel like I'm onto something over here. So let's hope that it works out, and fingers crossed.
No, definitely. I'm rooting for you, Behram, and I'm sure you will do wonders. And I wish you an amazing career, in this profession. And I'm sure that you'll get to whatever top you've envisioned for yourself. And, a testament to your hard work and all the hours that you've been putting.
Thank you so much, man. That actually means a lot. And thank you for giving me this platform to talk about all of these things that we've talked about today. For anyone watching this, I'm Def Mango on Twitter. It's written behind me. So go give me a follow.
Very, very obvious. I couldn't help but noticing it again and again. So good job on that. But in the end, thank you so much for your time, yaar. It was lovely seeing you, lovely talking to you. And
Likewise.
good luck to you, and good luck to cricket in Pakistan, football in Pakistan, and hockey in Pakistan.
Right back at you, man. Keep creating content. I know you've been doing this for a while. It takes time to build that following. There's a lot of videos where you yourself will keep looking back at them, and you're your biggest critic. That's how I look at life. And just keep on improving with practice. Everything becomes better, and you're on to something good over here as well. So I wish New Wave Global the best.